go about a third of the way from the top of the page, and we're going to add a rainbow. This rainbow, I would say to go to the center third of the page. You're going to need room on the sides, above and below. We're then going to bring this down with two big diagonals. So it's going to get a tiny bit wider as it gets lower, not much. He really is almost a rectangle. There's no difference between his head, his neck, and his shoulders. It's just a straight line. And from there, that's the basic shape. So we're going to add what are called construction lines. These guidelines are going to guide us throughout the rest of the drawing. Starting first with a vertical line going right down the center, and a U that goes about a third of the way from the top of this shape. Now we're going to use these to guide us throughout all the rest of his facial features, but the first thing that I'm going to build up is actually going to be his hat. We're going to add that classic fedora, right? What makes him an agent, the difference between Perry and, the Agent P that we know. So we're going to start this on the very top of his head, and we're going to add what looks like a big letter U. Now this U is going to go about halfway between that rainbow that we added and the one we just created. We're going to add this going off to the sides, and we're going to use this to build up the sides of his hat. Because technically the top of his head is right here at that rainbow. We're just going to connect this to the side with another U. And there you go. There is the brim of his hat. You might not see it quite yet because a lot of lines are starting to fade away, but to add the top of the hat, we're going to build what looks like a house, where we're going to continue from the side of his head, bringing up some diagonal lines, and just place two more on the top, and this is his fedora. And at this point, we're not going to add anything new. We're going to start to go back, we're going to darken in these shapes, and this is going to help us build up that detail there, because as I darken in the hat, you can really see it stand out, and all the light lines can fade away. You're really only going to see the half of your page right now. Now, I don't know about you guys, but Phineas and Ferb was one of my favorite shows. I loved it on Disney Channel. They did a great job. And if you didn't hear, it is actually going to be coming back soon. They are making a new season, which is pretty exciting. It did so well when it was on Disney Channel that it did leave for a while, but they decided to bring it back. They added like a movie at one point because they had such a strong fan base. And as of this week, they just finished the first episode of the new season. So it's coming out. They're coming together. If you know Dan Povenmire, he was one of the co-creators of this show. He's also he's also the voice of Dr. Doofenshmirtz. He has a TikTok account, and he was not afraid to tell you all the updates. So feel free to go look at that. But he did just post that they have finished that animation, which makes me very excited. This show was so successful that it was actually the longest running Disney animated TV show, and it just beat Kim Possible, which was also a really great show, but this one ran just a little bit longer, and I think that's cool. And it makes sense, because honestly, I feel like I watched it for like a lot of my life. It was a really good show. Now, we locked in the hat here. We're gonna add the band, which actually just starts, we're gonna lock in the rainbow that we made on the top of his head. And the next is just another rainbow on top of this. Now, they did lots of really fun episodes. Like, I remember my whole childhood, right, remembering the music, the fun, different random episodes they had. They even had a Star Wars episode back in season 4. And this is the episode that actually has the most amount of lines from Ferb. Because if you remember, Ferb doesn't talk very much, right? Sometimes there's a whole episode where he doesn't say a single word. So when he does talk, it has a big impact, because his voice doesn't really match his body. He's kind of got a really deep voice, right? But if you watch the Star Wars episode, that's where we hear from him the most. They just really went ham on Star Wars. They were like, we're Disney, we own this now, why not, right? And they just kind of went crazy with it, and I love it, because they can. Now, from here, we have a very fancy piece of toast, right? It's looking pretty good. But we're now going to move down to his face, and this is where we get to see that personality. Now, when he embraces the Agent P part of his life, he gets a little bit more sassy. He gets a little bit more grouchy to show that attitude, right? And we're going to show that in these eyes by going on the U that we made here, and we're actually going to add some eyebrows. These eyebrows are going to start right on that line. We're going to add what looks like a rainbow, just following the U until you get close to the center. And you want this rainbow to leave the head shape just a little bit. Where on the inside, you can add a little C curve. So we have our angry eyebrows. Underneath this, we're going to add half ovals, and his eyes are so big that they're actually going to leave the head shape at least a little bit. So they're going to bulge out right over there on the sides. And that's going to give us that attitude as well as those eyes to give him expression. And we can start to darken those in as well. Now, when they were first making this show, it actually took the co-creators 16 years to get this show up and running. And it was like their passion project. They really wanted to get it started, but sometimes it takes a while. And one thing that they decided was that they wanted to have an animal. They really liked the idea of having these agents. And we not only see Perry, but we do see lots of other agents, right? Like we see Peter the panda, we see the plant. You know, like there's a bunch that we see throughout the series. Some are named and some are just kind of hanging out in the background. But the reason that they decided to have Phineas and Ferb actually have a platypus was because it gave them a lot of freedom when it comes to this character. Because if you think about it, how many of you have actually seen a platypus in real life? Anybody, like one or two? I recently saw one at the San Diego Zoo. They just got one, and I was like, that's cool. But I didn't know much about them as like an animal, right? So when they were making this show, they wanted some animal that was more rare so that they could change things and the general audience would have no idea, right? Because they made this character a bright teal, which is definitely not the color of a normal platypus. And they were giving him like noises, and he was moving around, and he was doing all this crazy stuff. But who's going to second guess it because you haven't seen a platypus, right? And that really worked in their favor. Plus, they figured, you know, most people, you know, they're not going to be able to just go out and see one. It's not like you're going to go to the grocery store and buy one. So instead, they just, I guess you wouldn't buy an animal from a grocery store. But anyways, a pet store, you know. So it gave them a lot of that fun detail. But they did learn a while later, like there was a research, when they were doing research on like platypi, I guess? Anyway, they were doing some research, I should have looked that up. And what they learned was that actually when you put a platypus under a UV light, it does kind of look teal. And they learned that way after they made the show. And Dan Palmer made a video and he was like, I knew it, you know, just joking around. But he was like, I predicted the future. And I just think that's funny. He's a really fun personality. He's very outgoing. Now I'm adding his pupils in here, which are circles. And then we're going to lock this in. And you can start to shade this in as well. If you wanted to change the shape of these pupils, you could. It would still look like Perry, so you could add something fun in there. You know, you can add something from the show. You can make it Phineas and Ferb. That sounds like a lot of work, but it would be really cool. You could show them, like, you know, making, like, Candace's life, like, a living nightmare. She is so dramatic, but I love her. She's so funny. I was like, I feel bad for their mom because she sees nothing. But at the same time, Candace is really just like the girl that cried wolf, I guess. But we're now going to go through and we're going to go below and we're going to add his bill. Now, a platypus is kind of like the combination of a beaver and a duck, right? It makes almost no sense. So we're going to add the duck bill underneath this. And this is going to start right underneath the eyes. We're going to add a flattened rainbow. So I'm just going to stretch this off to the side, leaving a little bit of room between those two spaces. And we're then going to add another rainbow right underneath that. So you should have what looks like a hot dog right here. That's going to be combined together with some C curves. But we're not going to lock that in quite yet because in order to really make it look like a duck bill, we need to add what looks like the nose, which is actually just a triangle here on the top. It's going to go slightly in between the eyes. And you can start to lock in the outline of that shape. Kind of looks like like a fancy coat hanger kind of going around. Now, if you haven't been seeing many things for like our like news here in the parks, we do have an event every year called the Oogie Boogie Bash. Now, this is a Halloween event, and they typically add new villains. Now, one of the reasons I really wanted to draw this character this year is because they actually introduced that we have a new villain coming over, and it's going to be Dr. Doofenshmirtz. So I think that's cool, right? They posted a little video, and it's like a lab coat in the background. You can see Perry's head popping up in the back. It was so funny because online people were coming up with theories. I'm like, look in the back, that's straight up Perry the Platypus back there. And I just got so excited because last year I went to Oogie Boogie dressed as Perry, and I was trying to find like my whole crew. Like I found a Candace and I was trying to like collect people, and it was really, really fun. And then so many of the characters were like, why are you wearing a duck bill? And I was like, you don't understand. But it's just really entertaining. So I was like that niche, you know, you just gotta find your people. And it was really, really fun. So I'm hoping that they also add some fun more, like I went to Disney Channel night and they had a dance party where you could dance with Phineas and Ferb, and most importantly, Perry the Platypus was there. And he was there in like a little rave, you know, and they would have music and he was like dancing to Simp. Remember Simp?
Yes.
Yeah, that word kind of means something else online now. But it was Squirrels in My Pants. Yeah, I love that song. This show truly has like amazing music. They really popped off with the music in this show. And I think about it a lot. Now I'm adding his lower lip, which is just a U right here in the bottom. And the very last thing that we need is to now lock in the sides of his head. We're just gonna go through and we're gonna lock in anything from that like rectangle shape that's not covered up by the eyes or his duckbill, and anything else you wanna give him from here is considered extra credit. So if you wanna put something in the background, you can give him like a little plunger, right? Like a platypus plumber, Perry the platypus plumber. Perry the platypus, right? Like that's literally my favorite ongoing joke because somehow Duke Insurance can't realize that he only knows one platypus, but that's okay. He always is so wondrous about what exactly is happening with H&P. Now, anything else you want to add, you can put something in the background, but the last thing that we all need is a signature. So find a spot on your page and sign your name nice and proud, and that's it. You